Welcome, everyone. This is class 2 of Unconventional Watercolors. Again, I'm appreciative that you've returned and you have chosen, with so many choices, that you've chosen this, and I appreciate that. A lot of information to share with you today. So I looked at and Will and I were just talking about this. You know, the beauty of this format is you can sit live, but you can also review the recordings, and I would encourage you to do that. I had a chance to revisit the recording. I'm really happy with how everything went, but there were a couple of things that I realized I should probably make some alterations to enhance your experience. So in doing so, we're going to be working with 2 cameras. This first camera is just going to be an overall intro, closure, perhaps some transitions, and I'll do a bit of talking. As we go straight into painting, I'm going to go to a different camera. You'll see less of me and more of painting, and I hope that's okay with you. I wanted to quickly address a couple of things that have since come up in the class from last week. These are some observations, but also some questions that came up. So let me just touch upon that. Question: do you want me to paint the way, I'm sorry, do I want you to paint what I'm painting? So the simple answer is yes, but if for some odd reason you completely object to what we're doing in the classroom, the recommendation is try to stay with a brother or a sister or a cousin. Don't go way off south in your own direction. And the reason being is, and the value in painting what I'm painting or something similar, is I'm showing you how I painted it. So there's a lot of troubleshooting that you see and that I share, and you will most benefit by painting what I'm painting or something similar. The question was, will we be painting along with you? And the answer is no, you will not be painting along with me. And there's a couple of reasons. One, I think this format and my style, and it just works best that I share with you what I'm doing, my viewpoints, my points of view, my responses to things, my beliefs in things, and show you how to paint. With all due respect, if you painted with me, you couldn't keep up. And I don't want the pace of things to be a deterrent. And I also don't want you to fall behind, because you will. So it's much more advantageous to enjoy the demo experience, enjoy the lecture. If there are questions, ask them. Take all this information back into your own environment. Feel free to watch the films. Feel free to watch a portion of them or all of them, and feel free to watch them multiple times. But we will not paint together in this environment. Paper. So we talked a bit about materials. I'm going to touch upon a couple of, again, responses that I'm picking up. So there was a student that struggled a great deal handling some of the paint, specifically the white, that it just beat it up all over the place. And my guesstimate is that student is painting on hot press. So let's briefly review the kinds of papers that we'll pay attention to. It's hot press, which is smooth and hard; cold press, which is softer and textured; rough, which is very soft and very textured. So there's a term called calendaring, or calendaring. And back from the printing days, where I came to understand this, is what that is essentially is making the surface hard. And hot press is very calendared. It is made to be hard. So if you use hot press, you will struggle in this environment. So I recommend rough. If you can't get rough, go cold press. But under no circumstances do I recommend you use hot press, because you will be swimming upstream and it will be frustrating, and you don't know, and you won't know why. Just to touch upon briefly there, art supply options. So everybody has their art supply shop near them or not near them. And then, of course, we have online, and we've got the big houses like a Dick Blick's and a Cheap Joe's. I think the key is try one. If you can't get what you need, go to the other one. So if Dick Blix is back ordered, go to Cheap Joe's. The irony is I don't buy my supplies through art supply shops. I buy them through the big dreaded Jeff Bezos Amazon. And a very dear, smart friend of mine, because I was behind the curve on time frame, suggested I do that, and I do it all the time. And the beauty of it is, ironically, the supplies are there. Ironically, the prices are often better. And ironically, the delivery is by far superior. It's typically free delivery. You can get it next day or within 2 days. So for my money, I go to Amazon and I actually just search for, if I want to buy paints, I'll search for every single individual paint by the brand I want within Amazon. It'll show me, and then I'll buy it. Okay. So a brief word, there are many art supply options out there. If you get stuck and you can't get what you're looking for, go someplace else. Okay. Touch upon the idea of gouache and watercolor. So what is the difference? They're both water media. Watercolor is transparent or translucent, and gouache is opaque. I strongly recommend in this environment, you do not use any other gouache other than white, because you're going to struggle. So even with iridescence, there's an opacity to the iridescence because there's a silver, say in silver, there's a metallic flake. And so that's where you get the shimmer, but that's also where you get the opacity. Again, I'll emphasize, please do not use any other gouache other than white. It is the only one. Everything else, you will be swimming upstream. Okay. And the last thing, Padlet. So that's our environment where you can put up your work and get some feedback from me. What a huge mother load that is. Please do it. And I'm horsing around on there a lot and around there. So I typically will get back to you. It won't even take 24 hours. It'll probably take a few hours because I'm always clicking around. So I tend to give good feedback as thorough as possible, both on what I see is successful and areas you might improve. So please utilize that. And the other side where Padlet is really beneficial is to pay attention to my uploads. So for example, for last week, I uploaded the photo, I uploaded the sketch, I uploaded what it looked like at the end of the class, and I uploaded the final. So you can really see things up close and personal, and I'm constantly doing it. So already for this week, I have uploaded the source and I have uploaded the drawing, okay? So you always have those things to refer to, and I'll try to give you as much of the experience that will help round your understanding of what we're doing. Okay.
We do have a question.
Yes.
Richard asks, what about the use of soft pastel?
This is what I would say. The name of the class is called Unconventional Watercolors. So in my book, it's about learning watercolor. Now, if you want to add other materials for personal reason, that more power to you. I'm trying to serve up a 24-course meal full of really rich experience and information and guidelines. You don't have to eat all 24 courses, but taste them all. I can certainly give you feedback on other materials. I mean, I was an art director for 35 years. I can always give you feedback, but my focus is on watercolor. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. Anything else?
Yes. Diane asks, what about group participation in Padlet? Is it a space for group critique or is that discouraged?
Well, that's a very, very good question, because I did see that someone had commented on somebody else's. This is what I would say. I think the critique is much more robust when it comes from lots of different places. So I would encourage people to look at others' work, comment on it. But I would say if there is anybody that does not want to receive group feedback, just put the note, feedback from Ken only. Okay. But I would again encourage you that, an environment like this, if we were live, we'd be having live critiques at the end of the class and everybody would have an opportunity to jump in. So I want to provide that opportunity, but I also want to respect if someone's a little bit shy from getting comments from all over the place. Does that make sense? I'll assume it does. And this is also a work in progress, right? So we try something, we see how it works. If there's something better, we try something better. So, in the big picture, everything I teach you, how I teach you to paint, how we respond to other people's work, this is only a 20-hour class. I'm sorry, 15-hour class, 3 hours, 5 days a week. Get as much out of it as you can. So I think you can get real robust feedback from other people, and I encourage everybody to do that. That's a really excellent question.
And another question is from Heather, who asks, she was curious about how you stretch your paper onto cradled board.
I will touch upon that, but in all due respect, I think it's outside the scope of this class. I'll show you, I'll go fast, but there are a couple of things I'm going to, because here's another thing. I'm going to make my own paint. So a really good friend of mine came up to me, artist friend of mine, and he said, I know how you're painting. Are you really still buying paint from the manufacturers? He goes, you got to make your own paint. It's like pennies. So I actually bought a whole series of pigments. They're sitting in a box. I'll get to them. They might be there for about a year. But that's another whole aspect that we could touch upon, but it is outside of the scope of this class. Okay. All right. Let me just bring in. So this is my finished piece. See if I can get some light on it. Okay. In fact, let me try this. Give you a little bit more light. Okay. So when I came into this to work on it on my own, in class, we had active painting about 2.5 hours, right? I spent that much or more on the detail work here. And if anybody wants to look at my Instagram account, there's like a 10-second little something there. But I slowed it down. I took my time. I went just a slightly above horizontal slope, and I really worked some areas. So what I really love about this, one of the things I really love is, as you enter this, I think this, to me, this grabs my eye straight away, because it's big, it's warm, and then as soon as my eye goes here, it connects with the other warm piece. So right away, I'm connecting foreground, background, and some level of focal point. But ultimately, all of this lattice work, I think your eye dances around and celebrates in here, and then returns to different places. But this is the area that I think that your eye dillies over and just celebrates the richness of it and the surprise of it and the lace work of it and the repetition, because really it's just a whole lot of verticals, a whole lot of horizontals, right? So, but again, I still think as your eye comes over here, this big piece got some warmth, connects with this piece over here. And then even look at the sky. The sky has a lot of drips, smears, splatters, some of which I managed and may go away, but it really activates the sky. I don't know what's going on in there. Is it, is it the dark undergrowth of a cloud? Not everything has to make sense, but it kind of makes it, just rise with excitement. So that's where I'm at. I just have to sign this and frame this, and hopefully within 2 weeks, it'll be on a gallery wall. Fingers crossed. All right, let's touch upon what we're talking today. Well, let me touch upon one thing first. So the source material, again, I uploaded it. Here's up close and personal, right? As I looked at this, the shape wasn't doing anything for me. I saw it as a square. So like everything else that's complex, I gridded it off in fourths and fourths. I did that on my laptop. And then I did the same dimensions, fourths and fourths. And it got a little bit more compressed. But at the end of the day, I'm not in a gallery. I'm not going to show this next to my painting. People just want the painting. Okay. So it was a good question about, so what's going on here? All right. I buy watercolor paper in 2 ways. Full sheets and tear them down, and I'll show you how to tear them down. And then I buy a roll, and the roll is 51 inches by 10 yards. So I can make any shape, size. Biggest one I made was like 3 by 6 feet, but that gives me an opportunity to scale beyond the standards, right? So I take my roll, I open it up, I wet it, wet it. I cut it with a razor blade. And so this is a cradled panel. For anybody who doesn't know what a cradled panel is, there's literally a birch panel that is built out with some wooden support and is essentially the thickness of a canvas. So what I am doing now on my larger pieces is, so I take that paper, I soak it down, and I literally put this face down on the paper and I pull it a little bit and I stretch it like a canvas. Anybody who stretched like a canvas is, it's like the spoke of a wheel. So maybe 2, 3 staples here, 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 2, 3 staples. So what that does is it manages the tension of the page. Not that and you don't even have to pull this, you just kind of straighten it out, because when it's wet, it expands. And then when it dries, so I'm stapling this with on the outer edge here, and you'll see a lot of staples. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe every 2 or 3 inches. And then it folds over and I'm flipping it underneath just to keep it nice and neat, because when it dries, it can tear easily if you don't grab it correctly. But for all practical purposes, I have just stretched the paper as if it were a canvas. So now the options for my presentation, and this is a bit beyond the scope of this class, is I don't put this behind glass. I varnish it, and that protects it. And then there's some UV protection from the light. And then I put it into a floater frame. So it's much more contemporary presentation. So I'm looking to challenge all the things that I was told to believe about watercolor, and I'm finding ways that I say, there's another way, okay? And the presentation is the same way, okay? So now what is nice with this is, someone had asked before, gravity, does it always go down? Well, I could, if this is, I'm stuck when I'm stapled to the wall, but here I can lift it, I could turn it, I could put it flat, I could change my slope. So now all of a sudden it being portable, and I do some plein air events, meaning painting on location in a competition, I sometimes bring these. So in drawing this, so that's the fast and loose I'll go into about stretching onto a cradle panel. It is one of my objectives. In some of my experience, I have continually bumped into the perception that oil is more valuable than watercolor. History tells us, art history has told us that's the case, because oil was always the medium to put in galleries. Watercolor was typically sketches for your own personal reasons or to build up an oil. Okay, so historically, watercolor is a bit of the stepchild. A work on paper is a bit of the stepchild. And then, works behind glass are a bit of the stepchild. So what I'm trying to do is actually blur the distinctions between watercolor and oil in my presentation and say, it doesn't matter what I'm painting with. I just painted this really beautiful painting, focus on that. And the way I go about to try to make the presentation, that again begins to blur the distinction. Okay, so that's my own artistic journey. Some of these are, I'll introduce them, but they are a bit beyond the scope of this class. I promise not to rub that in, but you know what? The good news is maybe there'll be another class.
So we do have several questions.
Yes.
We have 3 from Diane. So Diane asks, what are your rules about using your images to paint and then show or sell?
All right, try that again.
What are your rules about using your images to paint, then show or sell? Was it show or sell or show or tell? You're muted, Diane.
Sorry, it's I know other classes I've taken, the instructor doesn't allow you to use any of the work that you've done in the class because it's his reference material.
Oh Jesus! Whoever it is, tell him to go jump in the lake. What kind of crock of shit is that?
Well, I just wanted to ask so that I don't get in any trouble.
All right. If I'm,
yeah.
You know, the whole subject matter, the whole source material. I don't want to know who the person is, but I would say that is really being precious.
Mm-hmm.
Because I snag source material from 1,000 places. That's a whole other topic, but
Yep.
Let's just say in this class, if I'm giving you the source material, feel free to paint from it.
Awesome.
I mean, that's really what it's all about. Wow, I'm sorry, I got to sit with that one. Wow.
So it was not another watercolor person.
Of course not. It was a precious oil painter.
No, it was actually pastel.
Okay. All right. Let's move on, or I'll start like flipping names and stuff. All right. Let's do this. So first thing I want to suggest is that I'm painting a square. So now if you're using a full sheet, that's a rectangle. So how do you get it from a rectangle to a square? So on a full sheet, you'll notice the outside edges have this kind of feathery, soft edge. That's called a decal. And paper is actually made in a huge slurry of water. So a natural decal is really, really beautiful. I mean, when you pull up, you see these things made where they're smaller.
Ken, your mic's not being picked up.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, now it is. It wasn't for like a second, but now you got it.
Well, you know, it's funny. I have a tendency to hit my ear and I think it turns it off. So
Gotcha.
That was a long way of saying paper is a beautiful thing. And the more we can find a way to respect it and play to its inherent beauty, we retain that beauty and only make it more beautiful. So when you don't want to take scissors to cut a piece of paper, you don't want to take a razor blade or a knife or anything like that. You want to tear it. So here's a Boulder Dash painting. So just the back I will show you. So this does not have any natural deco, but I'll show you how to tear paper. So really, I mean, I go like on maybe the edge of a desk and I just fold it. Not, I mean, you can already see the makings of a decollage right there. Right? So the ideal way is once you fold it, run a channel of water through here. So now all of a sudden it softens that edge and then you can kind of pull it apart. But I tend to be fairly impatient, so I don't always go to that length. So I fold it in half once. I fold it back twice. Now I'm not really going crisp on that edge. I'm just getting a good fold. And then I don't tear like this. I tear horizontal to the paper. So I just gently start tearing. Gently. And you can see right there what happens to the edge of the paper, right? Now, if you run that channel of water, it could even be more soft, but at the very least, if you're doing something other than your full sheet and you're tearing from a full sheet, try to do it this way, okay? I mean, just even that little bit of softness, it's really beautiful, okay? You know, take scraps if you want in practice. There really is no science to it. Okay. So I just showed you how to tear paper because I'm painting horizontal. So because this is, I'm sorry, not a horizontal, a square. So because this is on a cradled panel, I'm treating it like a canvas. I've actually brought out my easel that I tend to paint oils with. And the beauty is I can just stack it up there. Tighten it up a little bit. Beautiful, right? I have chosen to paint in charcoal. Now, there is no science. When do I do pencil? When do I do charcoal? But oftentimes I'll do charcoal when, even if it's complex, it's simple. As they get larger and they're a little bit simple, I draw with charcoal. I don't know. I mean, it's obviously blacker. It's bolder. I have shaded some areas in here, very direct. What I'll sometimes do is just soften some of those edges so it's not just all direct charcoal. You know, it's the way it's kind of like having a cast iron pan and you're seasoning the pan, right? So I have taken my source material, gridded it out four ways. If you can, hold on. If you look close, you can see here's a horizontal line right here in pencil all the way across. Here's a vertical line in pencil all the way down. There are 3 across, 3 down. I never worry about pencil showing through. Most of the time it's painted over, and as we talked about it last week, if it's not, it begins to be a marriage of painting and drawing.
So on the question of the charcoal, Richard does ask, why charcoal and not graphite?
There's no science. I mean, graphite, I think, is a pencil. It's lighter, it's grayer. Charcoal is crumblier. There's a certain touch to the paper. I mean, I can't say there's a whole lot of science to it. It may have, when I first started doing it, I may not have had graphite and I might have had charcoal when I reached for it. And then I started playing around, when do I use it, when do I don't use it? I mean, that's really a personal choice. And frankly, maybe just say charcoal might be outside the range of the scope of this class, and just work with something you're more comfortable with. Another thing here is, as I go bigger, I use a lot more paint. Excuse me for a minute. moisten these guys. I mean, I watched the film last week and there was some robust painting, but it's nothing like you're gonna see today. So I'm gonna use a lot of paint, a lot of water, and sometimes the charcoal I'm looking for that guideline. But then also as I'm wiping things out and painting, some of it shows through. So I don't know, it's one of those things I tried, I liked, I continue to try, I continue to like, continues to surprise me. So I mean, no real science, but maybe there are some reasons. Any other questions?
Yes, Diane had two more questions. In regards to your canvas, are you wetting both sides of it?
When I'm stretching it to the board or when I'm painting it?
When you're stretching it to the board?
Yes, I saturate it front and back. I mean, and so that when I actually pick it up and angle it, water is just pouring off.
And the other question is, what type of varnish? I think this was in regards to you finishing it.
Yeah, let's skip that right now. Let's focus on painting. Okay, and then we will come about with presentation. You know, truth of the matter is if I can buy it at Home Depot, I will, instead of buying it in an art supply store. So that goes for everything. So if you don't feel like the question was answered as we move along, bring it up again and I'll address it.
And that would be the end of the questions for now. So
okay, good. All right, so let's paint. I'm afraid to turn it because it'll. All right, so I have my go-to palette. Indigo, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, manganese blue, viridian. There's some cobalt turquoise, sap green. I don't use a lot of greens, but in something like this, it seems to require it. Mayan blue, parenthylene green. So if you're looking, I got like four-ish colors, four-ish variations of every color. So I'm coming across Naples yellow, yellow ochre, some kind of orange. That is, so now I've got like four reds. I'm not quite sure which is which, but there's an alizarin crimson, there's a rose madder, a quinacridone fuchsia, and then there's a pyrothene maroon, something like that. These pyrothenes I like because they're dark and have a lot of black in it. And so this will, I'm just reaching for richness and variety. Dark, middle dark, less dark, light dark. You know, so all the way around here. So as I'm moving along, imperial purple, cobalt violet, wisteria, ivory black. And let me just, so, and then I have another palette for just white, and I can't really tilt that because it's pretty liquidy. So I am prepared for the potential inevitability that I need wider surfaces, bigger surfaces, more soupy surfaces. So I quickly went to dollar store. Again, if you can't get, if you get it at dollar store, you get it at Home Depot, you're good. Just these pie tins, and they're grouped as like 2 for $1.25. I keep them until I end up not wanting to keep them, but I got about 8 or 10. And this just gives me a chance to get soupy to the extent when I really need some soup. Okay, so I'm keeping that off to the side. All right, let's tighten this guy. And I am going to switch over to the other camera and see how that looks. How's that?
Looks good.
Okay. All right, if I step in front of it, I can move it. Is the light okay?
The lighting looks good.
All right. So off to the, all right, so when I'm working in my workstation, I really need to pay attention to what is comfortable for me. My source material is typically off to the left. I'm right-handed. It is either, you know, mid tummy level, or I work with a laptop leaning up to me on my little, whatever, my little dresser thingy. So my primary source is to my left. Some materials are straight away. I tend to lean to the right with water and color, so my water bucket's to the right. So that's something, just as you kind of, I'm taking Tai Chi, so so you move between your materials. And I do have a printout version, and I'm not opposed to looking at. I might keep that off to the right, but I prefer my little tablet because, as I mentioned before, it gets really, it's bright. And so as I look at this piece right here, it is the coloration, and I mean, it's a very traditional, very conventional kind of setup. But by the time I paint it, it will feel very contemporary. Some of the colors will be a little less grade, some of them will be a little bit brighter. All right. So we always meditate on our subject matter, right? So these are flowers. Just imagine for a moment that these were just delivered on your kitchen table. You left the house, you came back. What's the first thing you experience? You experience the smell of it. The entire house might be fragrant. And so now, you know, I almost can feel this thing just in its fragrance, and it's beautiful to look, and some things are live and a couple have dropped, and so it's alive again. It's alive. The scent feeds my inspiration as anything else. Let's get to the cast iron pot and season it. Just toss in some water. I don't have to go up and down, and go side to side. No big deal. Just seasoning it. So as we talked about before, you got paper, then you got water droplets, then you got paint. The paint floats on the water droplets, and that opens up a whole different dynamic. I've been thinking about where do I start on this from the beginning. I am going to actually start with some white on the bottom. Oh my gosh, a conventional watercolor would say, Ken, go to jail without a get out of jail free card. But part of the reason I want to get something in the bottom is because when I paint them in the top, they're going to interact they're going to run through the bottom. So I am going to take a little white, just a dab of manganese to dull it out a little bit. And too much water, more paint, more paint. So I'm just looking for some different consistencies. Oopsie. Since I'm on it, a little more manganese, a little bit of white, and we'll make a couple of marks into the detail. Don't know what it is, just a couple of round pieces. And I'm not worried about defining it now, because truthfully, it will get torn apart over time. I really like this lighter blue, and then that was manga blue. And this is a little hit of cobalt. So that really gives me a little bit of life, adding paint while it's wet and letting the water paint. Beautiful, exactly what I wanted. Okay. All right. So maybe let's go into some pinks since we're doing some white. Ah. And where do I get a pink? Well, let's see. I'm grabbing some alizarin crimson. I'm grabbing some quinacridone fuchsia. I'm grabbing that and dipping into white. Maybe a little too much in here. It's gonna wash it away. Just open that up a little bit. And carry it on. It doesn't really look like the source material. Does that bother me? Or it's not, it's just source material. It's just a place to start. You could change it however you want. I mean, look at my palette already. It's a little crazy. So now the beauty of having something in your palette that's messy and not what you're intending to paint is it interacts. A little bit much here. Oh yeah, I had that little shout of panic. This is beautiful coming right in here. You see how those channels are coming? Ironically, it's the bigger the painting, I sometimes use the smaller the brush. And I just want to come in here. More red, more other red, more still other red. How do you gray out a color? Well, you gray out a color by using its complement. So you don't add brown, you don't add black, you add the complement. So you've got red, yellow, blue. Red and blue make purple. You go across to the complement to yellow to realize that's how you grade out. So right now, what I'm working with is some green to dull out the reds. I'm going to be careful not to cover all of the paper. I already have to squeeze more white. Big squeeze of white. That won't be the last. Okay, I need some variety just for my own peace of mind, I'm tired of painting red, taking some sap green, some Naples yellow, maybe a spot of white, a little bit of this, not mixing entirely on the palette. Now, last time I mentioned to you, I want to paint on paint, not paper. So I'm really attacking this. The primary objective here is to just get a lot of action on the sheet. And then I could come in and, fiddle around with things. Uh-oh, hold on. Uh-oh, I thought I did. I actually accidentally grabbed white oil paint. I was like, why isn't that blending? All right, let me get rid of that. It's not the first time, won't be the last. Oil colors, oh my God. Who'd have known? I mean, I could get really upset about that. Why would I want to get really upset? Just paint. Now I'm putting it almost straight out of the tube because I want to introduce water to do some of the painting. Feel like I'm a little bit of an uphill climb in this area. I put so much pigment. I need to give it something to relate to. So I'm going to put some black and I'll put some imperial purple. Where was I? Taking a bigger brush. So part of what I'm paying attention to is the directional nature of my painting. If I've got a lot of things coming down, well, maybe I need a horizontal. So again, you're always thinking about, bear with me just a minute. My palette has gotten a little uncontrolled, so I'm going to pour some stuff off. I never pour it off. I usually pour it out. So I actually want to do that and then get rid of the extra. So as you can see, as I start throwing more and more color, it just makes it richer, more complex, less pure. Bear with me, I need to wipe out some red. Right, look at that. So the color I can't stand to have on my palette and influence anything else is green. Oh, green is nasty. So I try to isolate that. The red, again, maybe I should have mixed it in my pan. This right here, gotten a little crazy. Well, I pour it off. You know, I do this 100 times and it doesn't look like throwing dots. It paints its way in. All right. Now I'm feeling good. Now I'm feeling like I'm starting to get covered in water and paint. Now I feel like I'm painting. Naples yellow, low yellow ochre, almost straight out of the tube. So much so I can do that. I like leaving big chunks because as I run the water through it, it will carve through and just leave some remnants. Throw some white in there. And I'm losing my container down here. No mind. I'll clean it up a little bit. I got my brain. Always got to have a backup. So it's a process. I'm not worrying if I get this straight away like traditional watercolor because I can come back and make it even better. All right, this green, that green. touch of that green, a little of that yellow. Why not that yellow? And maybe some white. So that's what the brush looks like, just gobbed with paint. And I'm coming in. So I am sure I'm painting flowers, but one of the things I love about this is it's almost, it's a lot of circles, right? So I challenge you to constantly think abstractly. Every painting should be abstract, even if it's representational, because fundamentally it's just about shapes. And so if you don't get wigged out about something, oh my gosh, that doesn't look like a leaf, don't sweat it. Maybe over time you'll get there with it, but just focus on it being a shape. That white looks really strong. If there's a lot of water, what's going to happen? It's going to dissolve away, and that's okay. It'll soften. Adding some greens with a darker green. Thinking about just popping my brush in to make some exciting marks. Bounce over here, all the way up here. Probably missed that color, but do I care? I have to evaluate it in the painting. I got some liquid in my palette. Oh, that's scary. Look at that dark, obliterated, that beautiful flower. Okay. Just hit it with some water. Encourage it to come down. Look at my arm already. Oh, that feels good. Okay. Oh gosh, I can get really overwhelmed with this thing. No matter, one thing at a time. And knowing it's a process, I know that if what I don't get now, I can get later, but everything I'm getting now is helping me with this absolute beautiful base. Just popping some meridian and some other things on my brush in there. Here's my palette. Perfect. And I see a color I may want to try to achieve, and I don't have it on my, oh, another oil paint in my watercolors. I need an assistant. All right, I'm actually popping a little cad yellow medium. I don't like cad yellow light, it's too acidic. I like warmer colors in general. I just respond to warmer colors in general. So my yellows, I tend to get a little warmer. Come on, all right, that's fine. First half gallon down. And part of the reason I'm going through so much color is so much water, is I'm only using a couple brushes, and oftentimes when I'm switching colors, I'm cleaning it. So the sad truth is a lot gets washed out. But that's just the way it is. This whole area feels a bit yellowy, green. How am I doing filling in my drawing? Well, you know, even with that, you can see how this is just obliterating. And no doubt that will continue to happen. How are we doing on time, Will?
It is currently 1:57.
Okay. If it's all right, I want to stay on this a little bit. I want to try to just give me another heads up in 15 minutes, please.
Understand.
And I expect that I will have the painting covered at that point. So now I'm just madly getting some color down there. So much is going on here. Some of that will disappear, but again, it's an undertone. Even if 10% of it shows, it is valuable. But I'm not worrying about that now. I'm trying to be spirited in my painting. I'm trying to be deliberate. I'm trying to be adventurous in how the color is being laid down. I'm introducing the entire host of players to each other so they can participate and influence each other. And then I'll put a little hair dryer on it. We'll see where we're at and we'll continue. But since it's damp, since it's wet, it is a perfect time to just keep lopping stuff in. So that's why I want to stay on it right now. So now you might be able to tell why I don't want you even thinking about painting with me. Because, you know, blink and, you know, we're going to be in separate places. And so sometimes my marks are a little more deliberate. That's the sound of water washing away my paint, but I am okay with that. So everybody is influencing each other. And right now I'm just blocking colors in. Go at this a couple of times, and that underpainting is, you know, it is a real supportive base to everything else. In a lot of ways, I'm painting brighter because I will probably be coming over this with a lot of white at some stage, and that's just going to soften everything. So that's a really good point. I've seen some people painting with almost pure direct colors. I saw in Padlet, there was one that was almost pure orange, pure blue. Sometimes those things have a hard time relating to each other. The one watercolor class I had, the guy said, we'll put a wash of burnt sienna. I take the same concept and I would say take a wash of white and toss a wash of white, and just that layer that you can get out of it is often enough to relate really unrelatable pieces. So this is going to be color, you know, spots and spots of color. And then the challenge will be to relate everything. Not worrying about it now, not worrying about it now, all in due time. All in due time, plenty to be problem solving. Best thing to do is to just keep painting. And if I get some colors wrong, or if I want to shift them, no matter. A purist will say, you know, you got to get it right the first time. And I would say, you know, if it takes you 20 or 30 times to get it right, that's okay. This is a little cobalt violet. Love the color. Hate the fact it really doesn't have any presence. I mean, it takes a lot. Toss some things in here while this is alive. All right. Now we'll get real aggressive with the darts. Gnarly, gnarly paintbrush. Perfect. I'm going to have to take a tin because my palettes are absolutely polluted. Big scoop of black. Little hit of red. One of the reds, don't matter. And then a little hit nearby of blue. And what I want to do is to play off of some cool and warms with the black. That little mark right there is beautiful. I couldn't have designed that. So I'm going to accept it though. There's some imperial purple. I already used my black. Black, black, black. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, black. Big scoop of black. Big scoop of cobalt. And here I'm being a little bit careful, squeezing, pushing some of that paint out. There's going to be some areas that are going to be lighter that traditionalists would say, well, retain that white. We're not going to worry about it. Big scoop of black. Now, when I say big scoops, my big scoops, I typically get 3 squeezes out of a tube of paint. On a larger painting, I might go through 25, 30 tubes of paint. So now you start seeing why it really makes sense to think I can make my own paint. There's some kind of crazy marks going on in here that I'm okay with. Now I'm going to throw some water here, but I want to be a bit careful because I don't want everything to just be polluted with black. So right now I'm just trying to, we're painting shapes. When I'm painting the flowers, those are the positive shapes. Now I'm painting the negative shapes. And by painting the negative defines the positive. Already used all that black. One more round. hit it with some ultramarine blue. Now, I just want to start defining things. Even this black will probably be repainted. Gosh, I already went through that squeeze of black. But look what kind of excitement is going on down here. You've got all these colors coming down, dragging through and influencing the lower colors. And as they're doing it, these channels are rich with color. So for me, my paintings aren't about a cityscape or flowers, they're about paint. How are we doing on time?
It is 2:08.
All right, I am gonna stop. Woo! Lordy B, right? We've got a base. There are a lot of things that are not defined, but there's a base. This is the time where maybe you take some of this other liquidy color and throw it into some of these things. It's a muddier color. There's one of the reds and some white. A little bit of water. Little bit of water. I am going to wash the vase cleaner. Right down to the paper with just a spray water. Let's go ahead and take a break. Hold on a sec. Whew. Let's take a break. I've got to reclaim some of my palettes, right? That's one palette. There's another palette. But I need to reclaim some space. And then I need to, gotcha, the mess. Perhaps, squeeze out some more color. So before we take a break, is there any questions?
Yes, Lisa asks, why did you spray the water right down to the paper?
That's a good question. Because right here is the vase and it's going to be light. And I like the fact there's a lot of influence, but there was so much paint there that to some extent I would be battling it. I'd be fighting it. So I sprayed it down to create these beautiful channels down here, really beautiful strip of paint in here that, I might mix. There's some really lovely things going on with paint, but I knew I needed to get this base on the lighter, whiter side. And it started feeling like it would have been a battle if I didn't pull some of that out. Make sense? All right. 2 and 2. Take a little break. Okay, we're back after our first break. And as you saw, I went at this vigorously. Some areas may be true to where I want to go. Most areas are affected in a way that cannot be their final existence. So we looked at this. I started this base, I painted white and such. And I like the fact that we get all this influence building up on top. It was my opinion that it was starting to be affected a little too much, and that I would be struggling to make it look how I wanted to. So I simply sprayed it down. The fact that we're painting on water droplets, you can spray it down or scrub it down, as I did in the that architectural piece last week. As long as you're painting on water droplets, you could bring it down to paper, bare paper. So what I did in our little break, I refilled 2 half gallons, so we've gone through a gallon of water. I cleaned up my palette a little bit. I don't want to go upside down. So I cleaned it up a little bit because some colors like the orange, I didn't want to influence everything. Some colors like the green, I did not want to influence everything. All these were filled with a puddle of mud. So I just put this under the sink, rinsed it, rinsed off these fresh tubes, and then just came in here with a paper towel and just wiped up the excess. There's still some paint material there, but that's okay. I just didn't want to. Maybe today's theme is not to swim upstream. I didn't want to swim upstream. I freshened up some colors. I added a couple of greens, more Naples yellow, and a little bit more black. I squeezed out much more white. I found that I do have, my concern was I just ordered that white, but of course I clicked the wrong button and I ordered oil. So, but fortunately I did have some white here that you won't be forced to just listen to me tell you the effect. So now I'm just going to come in here judiciously and start defining things a little bit better. Don't know the brushes that I'll use, but this is kind of one. This is a number 12 Escoda. I use Escoda brushes if I buy decent ones. This is a number 12, and then this one is a number 20. I will probably use these two in this next wave, but I wouldn't be surprised I end up using the smaller one more than anything. The surface was pretty wet. It was not soaked, surprisingly. A lot of things had already dried up, but some heavy patches were still wet. I took a dryer to it, and it was really just to take the wetness down, but I don't want to dry it to be dry. If I dried it to be dry, then I'd go ahead and wet it again. But there are some really strong direct pieces of pigment in here that if I channel some water through it, it will carve through, leave some remnants, and it's best when it's still a bit gooey. So, shall we? I'm going to use the smaller of the two brushes. Oh, and actually, let me go ahead and switch over to the other camera. And if there are meaningful questions, you can just ask them straight away, no problem. Okay. All right. It's kind of right at that point where it's like, what the heck are you trying to do? But there is a pretty good base. And it gives me a place to keep building over and over. So I am going to start maybe in some, tell you what, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a place to start your, I won't rhyme it, but all right, we'll start here. So I'm picking up some Naples yellow. And now as I'm mixing on my palette, I'm actually being a little bit more careful. And then if I am, when I say careful, I mean, you know, where is it? Right in here. It is a little bit more contained. So I'll be able to mix a lot of color on that surface. Now, as I go through, I'm not just painting over everything. That's not the point. I'm defining some things, I'm painting over some things, but by leaving some of that base alone to show through, really builds some dimension. So white and Naples, real opaque, you could see I can go straight over even black. Let me get a little bit more color there. Boogie boogie, I should have put some little spot of some pure yellow, cadmium yellow medium, just to brighten it up, but I'm still dulling everything down. A little more. And so even the areas that I'm not painting heavily, it's still alive. It's still moving. So the water is channeling through in a way that actually begins to suggest the kind of layering of the flower. And that's what I'm after. I mean, if I can suggest to water to paint things in a way that I can't paint, you know, there's real beauty that there's no other way in my mind that you can achieve. Need more white. I think we're going to go through a lot of white just because the flowers are light. A lot of water here. Is that too much water? Oh, I don't know. Is there ever such a thing as too much water? Well, I don't know. So I'm looking, I'm mixing, and I'm putting paint down, and I'm moving away and moving on. There's a lot to paint. Since I have this color, I'm going to stay on it a bit. And it appears over here somewhere. Why do I have to retain my whites? Why do I have to retain my lights? I mean, I could just paint over them and then give a little peekaboo where you can see the influence of it underneath. Not every edge is defined. Rub that out a little bit. This is really beautiful. I'm happy with it. There's enough moisture. It is chasing down. This is, I don't know what's going on here, but it should be yellow. And I'm just painting. Just dabs with a paintbrush. All it is paint. If I put together my paintbrushes in a compelling way, I will be able to convince you that it's a floral arrangement. Variety, small brush, large brush, liquidy, wash, sturdier wash, chiseled with a tool, constantly thinking about variety, constantly thinking about delighting the eye. And I'm a believer that an artist doesn't finish their painting, a viewer finishes their painting. So I am giving a number of suggestions here, and it's for a viewer to come in, experience it, respond to it, and they finish the painting in their mind. I'm giving them an illusion. I'm suggesting. I know you were afraid of that charcoal. Not something to be afraid of, right? All right, more Naples. more white. Still enough water that it's dripping and it's, so if you do something and it has 10 drips, people might wonder, was it intentional? And the point is to make everything intentional. It's like if a picture is slightly crooked, you'll know it. So either make it perfectly straight or really make it crooked, because otherwise it looks wrong. So the point of it is to be, directional. What's the word I'm thinking about? Intentional. This coming in here, we get a little more yellow, brighten it up. And this is just a series of triangles. If I pull it off well, it'll look like a flower on the table. Moving along, nonstop. There are plenty of times if I'm painting on my own, I'd be sitting, taking a break, whatever. But at least in this environment, I want to show you as much as possible. Toss some white, toss it. Right, any of that. All right, so why don't we look into the green? Take some sap green, take some of that cadmium yellow, and why don't we start working up some of these things? Working the whole surface, top to bottom, left to right, circular. Trying to paint swiftly because I want to take advantage of it being wet. As I paint some of this, I'm asking, does it make sense? That's not a matter to take up. If I keep painting my shapes and I keep working the surface and I keep developing it, fine-tuning it, softening it, tightening it, all of that, it will make sense. And then the pieces that may or may not look like a flower, they're, sorry, lost my train of thought. Then it's just about, the delight of the eye. I love that leaf right here. Comes across this red thing, probably going to be a flower. Seemed a little bit boring. Just rub my finger right through it. Working the entire surface. No prejudice here. If I don't get it right, I can put color over it, whether it is translucent or opaque. I'm not worried. Admittedly, even at the end of that last session, I have my own sense of panic. Plus I'm painting in front of you all and you're recording me for eternity. So I feel that, but as we learn these techniques, we learn that we don't have to be a slave to watercolor. We can harness the effects of watercolor in ways that perhaps we don't control them. I don't know that you'll ever want to really control them, but you can harness them a bit. And you don't have to be afraid of something. You can change it, you can paint over it, you can scrub it out. So there's some really dandy stuff going on in here, and I want to just put a bit of a wash I may lose it all, but now I'm not even putting a wash. I'm just dropping bits of white. Splash, splash, splash. Let's do something fun. Let's do the tabletop. So the tabletop to my eye is lighter value than the darkness. Comes to the foreground. I'm not going to make a big fuss of it, but it also has kind of a purpley color to it. So I'm going to make some purple, I'll put a little black, and then I'll whiten it up. I'm reaching in with my finger so I don't pollute all that white. With my brush, which is dark, but so kind of nice. Not going to have enough, no way. I'm not worried about that. I'm going to swiftly cover the surface. Okay that I lose some of those streaks. Wouldn't be surprised they reappear. It's coming in here and chiseling the shape. My hand is covered with white. Only one thing to do when your hand is covered with white, dip it into the tub of water and toss it. Now these little tiny drops will make their way. We like that. Not everything has to be a gallon of water poured on it. And I'm twisting my brush to get into these areas. Opened up some of the paper. I'm good with that. It's kind of nice, kind of lovely. Keep painting. Chisel, 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 chisel. Kind of like that. Here I thought I wasn't going to have enough. Actually, I want to darken up this side just a little bit. But it worked out just great. Not everything has to be a liquidy wash. Can't tell what's going on over it. We'll paint what's going on over it. We'll paint it over it, but I'll leave some clue for myself. So in a lot of ways here, I'm moving my brush in a way that I'm sketching. So I'm kind of sketching with paint. Not always, I don't always just lay down a clean wash. Screw that. I'm sorry, forget that. So already we're starting to get some dimension. I'm going to add some water to this beautiful color. Tip it and toss it. More water. So not a bad base in that base. I'm sure I'll paint more of it. The moisture is starting to bring these feathered effects. Absolutely lovely. And because there's white, it's WYSIWYG does not come into play. All right. I love all that. I love all that. But I need to move on. New half gallon of water. Okay. Deep breath. Mixing up some black, spot of purple, spot of cobalt blue. It's coming in here. I don't paint all the lights and then the darks. I paint the lights and the darks and the lights and the darks and the darks and the darks and the lights and the darks. In that order. Pointing my brush, directional. Starting to chisel out so that this ghosty kind of shape becomes something. I'm not going to paint the whole thing because it'll give me a bit of dimension. What am I doing? What am I doing? This is a really important place. That's why I did that. Right in where? Right in here. Here. There. More black. More cobalt. Leave the red out. That black isn't solid. Okay, coming from here to there, to there, to that, to this, which brings me that. It can be confusing tracking your painting. Regardless, yeah, I mean, you don't have to paint as messy as I am to have difficulty tracking that. All right, let's see. I think we need something a bit overall. That will be a little Naples and white and bigger brush. I ruined it. A lot of white in there. We know what happens with white. Essentially, it carries the other color that might be with it. It really does dissolve, and it really just turns a bit of a texture. So this looks too hard to me. So I want to, whoopsie, too much. Off to the side. That much, that much, that much, that much, that much, that much. That much. This much. You can see how hard I'm pushing into the painting. All right, some of that white isn't. Oh, just throw water. I'm going to take a little bit of orange on my fingers, and I want to get into this space a little. That's a orange, I guess. Nothing about this do I feel I need to correct right now, right? Actually, there's really wonderful things beginning to unfold, and they will only unfold when you put a lot of paint on it. How some of these pieces are dragging through, and there's beautiful quality going on in here. With your permission, I'm going to just hit it with the hair dryer just to take the abundant water off. Really lovely things happening with just that little bit of water and that little bit of white and color is as it's coming down in here, it's hitting this really rich saturated section of this dark. And this is where you get action from gouache, white gouache, that you will never get anywhere else. It is just this feather approach. I can't paint it. I can't get it with another paint. I'm gonna come in here, maybe drop some white for that channel. Helps relate the foreground, the background, all these various colors. Sure, there's some charcoal coming through. I'm okay with that. But 98% of the charcoal is gone. So even some of my roadmap is gone. And that's why I'm continually looking here, and I'm continually making judgment as this flower really should be yellow instead of red. So what? The only thing that matters is not that I match my source material. The only thing that matters is this is a homogeneous, related, dynamic, exciting painting. And so you always make your judgments here. All right, I think it's important that I keep getting some darks in here. My palette is all kind of polluted again. That orange is very invasive. Look at that. I don't need that much orange. I'm gonna just take a quick swipe. Yeah. Put orange back a little bit. There's some liquidy stuff that's beautiful. I pour it in my hand and I throw it. Oh, fear, oh, fear. Oh my gosh, I ruined it again. A little bit more here, white and some red. I'll throw it there. I'll throw it down there. I'll throw it there again. I'll throw some water there so that those don't just look like dots. They start, I mean, dots are behaving themselves. I want it to misbehave. Nice, nice, loving it. I am not unhappy with this. Any questions so far? Maybe like, are you an alien? Does anybody have any questions? I am going to quickly change water. I went through another gallon. So that's 2 gallons on this paint. But I'm constantly kind of stepping back, course correcting, looking at details. What do I like? What's invasive? And literally everything's got paint. Everything's got paint on it right now, including me. All right, apologies for that interruption. I'm happy with what's going on in here. I need to come up to this level now. There's a lot of area that hasn't really been dealt with. So let's start addressing that. What color is that? What the heck there? All right, little white, little Naples, spot of a red. Don't know what red. If it's not the right red, just grab another one. Grabbing some colors, more Naples. I've almost used my entire squeeze. It's okay. Excuse me, I need another squeeze of Naples. Got it. Ready to go. Off to the races. Turning, looking, mixing, painting. I'm putting some lines in here, some just direct dots. Trying to build some of that dimension. Not discouraged by any of the drifts, but if I were, a channel is defined and I can always just drop some water into it. And drop some water into it. So now that'll carry all that stuff out of there. Water doing again what I couldn't do. Really crazy action in here. It's very pronounced. But we know when white dries, it looks different. I may even want to say, okay, I don't want that channel so pronounced. Water, water, water in a channel. Water, water in a channel. More water in a channel. And keep moving. We're going to move up. I'm going to grab a red, maybe two reds. So I got two reds, some cobalt violet. Oh, I think probably a spot of white. White, white, where are you? Oh, ooh, oh, it's in my palette. All right, not too liquidy. I mean, I just mixed it up. You don't see a drop coming off of here, right? So that shows you the thickness of it. That's kind of nice. That's kind of nice. Because I didn't mix it, I can see some direct pigment and some mixed pigment, which is wonderful. Coming in here, not painting the whole thing, because I may leave some of those areas that are painted or unpainted. I might leave them alone. But now I'm just trying to close this up. A little more paint. More paint. More paint. And it's intended to be a little bit darker. White is everywhere. I have some paint. I have a lot of paint on my brush, so I just decided to spin around and hit some areas. Still moving. Still moving. Still misbehaving. Line. Brush mark. Line, line, line. Doesn't have to be straight, doesn't have to be perfect. The fact that it has this kind of twist to it or lift emphasizes again, it's a painting. Paying attention to everything. These channels might want to wash out a little bit. Just dropping white in those channels. White, no, not white, just water, I'm sorry. Not eliminating it, but I'm flushing it, and then it will just be more transparent. Line is too defined. Mess it up. Mess it up. Mess it up. Fingerprints. Some of this stuff is a bit destroyed. That's okay. It may be left that way. I may paint other details into it, but it really depends on what's going on here. So let me put a little hair dryer on there because I think we want to see what it looks like when white is not wet. Okay. It's not dry, but the very wetness is brought down. Whew. How are we doing on time?
It is just turned 3 o'clock.
All right, why don't we take a break right there? And then, hold on a sec.
Can you show us like detailed zoom in on your painting so we can see like the close up?
I can, showing you isn't the problem, getting it back to the position is. So yes, I will, I understand. I'll do that when we return. So we'll take about a 10-15 minute break, and when we come back, there'll be about a half hour, 40-ish, and then we can talk about any questions or, you know, in terms of an assignment. I will tell you straight away, I will not be able to finish this today, okay? All right, let's take a break. Okay, we're back for the home stretch. There was a really good request that we see a close-up of some of the effects. So I'm going to shift to the other camera and then bring it close to the painting. Or at least try. I'll just start from the upper. I'll try to keep it still. But you can see there's nothing is standalone. Everything is being related to everything else. And then, so you've got really pronounced drips here, and you've got really soft drips here. And again, that variety. Okay. Is that helpful? All right.
It's almost like an impressionist painting because like up close it looks completely different than when we see the big picture of you working on it, and we get a better image, like more comprehensive from far away.
I agree with you that where I would say I can relate to Impressionism is that Impressionism is essentially about every single brush mark times 100,000. And so when you take a step back, you really begin to appreciate the illusion. Claude Monet did not paint water lilies. He painted ovals and different shapes. And when he stuck that together with 100,000 brush marks, he gave you the illusion that it is watercolors. So I had mentioned to you, there's no way I can finish this here, but you can see I've got a really good start. We've gone over it twice. What I will try to do is to really attend to the unpainted areas, and that's probably about as much as I can do here. And then I'll reflect as to whether I finish it at the beginning of next week and start something else, but we can, let me just reflect on that a little bit. All right, so let me get a little bit more of a shift. This camera also is not true color. It's actually very cool. So, you know, the colors are far more pure. Let me actually see if I can do this. That might even be better. Okay. All right. Let's start doing things. Please give me a heads up, 1/4 to the hour.
Got it.
All right, so the downside of taking the break and stepping away is everything that's alive hardens up. And so you lose some of that life. So that there is at least one motivation to stay on to something, but truthfully, because I even thought like, oh, would I, after we're done here, would I continue painting this? And the reality is 3 hours of this is exhausting. I might just have to take a nap. You know, because there's a lot of concentration, trying to move along. All right, I needed to stab into that. However, let's find where we need to. So there's that. There's a beautiful pink flower there. I'm liking the looks of that. I'm kind of squaring my edges off because they're not exactly round. You know, and some of these shapes, some of this like gob of paint. Oh, I should have shown you something from the side. There are a couple of places that are just gobs of paint, and I intend to just leave it there. As I do there, I mean, water might carry that, but I'm not thinking about that. But just slow and easy. It's funny because I heard this saying, this is much more in traditional watercolors, but I agree with it, is draw like a tortoise and paint like a rabbit. And the challenge will always be picking up that energy that you had a day later. And that's always a challenge. This is white as gobby. I'm gonna create a channel, send it down there. Maybe wipe it out, wipe it over, spot it. Send that channel and keep moving. This guy is actually never used so much orange in my life. Just those couple of marks make that exciting as a painted surface and suggestive as a flower. If this thing were all by itself, you'd probably say, what the heck is that? But in the context of this, the illusion is that it is a flower. And it makes sense because it's in the company of all these other shapes that are giving you the illusion that they are flowers. White, I have to squeeze a little white to get some pure white. I'll go into a different pan. Not like these things have to be kept separate, but the reality is white is something that gets into everything. And if you don't want it to get into something, you really have to quarantine it a bit. Okay, now what's going on up in here? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Makes me think about the John Lennon, beautiful, 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 beautiful ball. Just making some marks. The color in the background is lovely. Grab some purple. Make some marks. Darn it, more white, more white. Where did I put the white? Give me white. Being timid in my squeezes. Ah, that's an interesting thing. So, and I don't know what the right language is. So if I don't use the right one, don't get mad at me. But it's the essence is an amateur is afraid to be too bold. A professional is afraid to be too timid. And so what does that mean for us? I mean, the lesson really is, especially with watercolor, go bold. It'll dry if it's wet. There's another saying, if it's right when it's wet, it's wrong. Because we already know it dries back. Moving around in here. I think there's some reddish things going on in there, who's to say. Just a dab, and a dab, and a dab, and a dab. Bring me another dab. Give me a dozen dabs. All right. Lovely. What the heck's going on in there? I don't know. But in the context of this, I've given some clues. White is prominent. It's scary. It's obliterating everything. But what do we know about white? It will change. Closing in on covering the surface. Oh, the fear of white. Paper, that is. Now, I'm doing it with a brush. The one thing I don't like is when I throw dots or throw water, it kind of gives a big streak, like a directional line. That's a good idea to bring in a flat. And that's why I use some of those larger flats. I'm just dancing around, dropping brush marks. Light, dark. If I can cover a surface of paper that hasn't been covered yet, all the better. Even a cream flower isn't just cream. There are all these colors in it. Maybe a hint of green, maybe the reflection of what's going on around it. All right, sap, green, and some cad yellow. Something else in there, I imagine. All right, and I need to get that yellow, haven't dealt with that. That needs to be some white, do that. White, do that. So you can also see like these drips, they're not like I'm designing these drips, they're a byproduct of my style. Obi. Holy cow, what happened there? Another technique is to take a dry brush, and I'm just throwing the wetness on my floor, and put it into water and pigment. It's like it will absorb it. Feel like a dark green. So I'm throwing some dark into the light. It'll just soften it. It'll just gray it. And before I've scared you all that I have ruined my painting. Do my George. Do my George. Well, I ruined that painting. No, not at all. No, not at all. Where's my black? How are we doing on time?
It is 3:31.
Oh, good. All right. So what I'd like to do is to dry this up. So there's a lot of white and it's taken some darks and it's made them softer. That's great. But if I can find my black, I would like to go back to fairly a good darkness. All right. Can't find my black, so I'll mix it up. And I'll clear an area there. And so what I'm doing is taking lots of indigo, ultramarine blue, hit it with some alizarin red, throw some viridian in there. Lordy. So if you can hear, you may not hear because my buds are on. But you could stand next to me and hear me scrubbing into the painting. Your brushes take a beating for that. Something to. Painting doesn't have enough of my fingerprints in it, so let me get some of those in. With your permission. One last mark. Back to white. Because I kind of want this to be painted with water. I never use paper towels. Only to maybe dry my hands. And we will have, my brushes are flinging everywhere. Crisp that edge. What's that gonna do? Right. Oh, I know. Um, so I'm just laying some brush marks out in kind of negative painting for the pattern that is on here. Let me just do something real quick. Now I've got a little bit of white and manganese. Just tossing it into some live areas. You know, this is going to be painted over and over a little bit more. Something like this, when I go large, I may paint it, I might return to it 20 times. This one, I think, in order for me to finish, I will have to return to it probably 5 times. And since I've got some white, let me go ahead and get a couple last things, and then we'll close it up for today. Look at that white. Just kind of working some highlights. Okay, whew. Let me switch cameras here. So you can see even, I mean, it's looking pretty darn snazzy so far. This is much more in the direction that I paint, because in painting a little bit larger affords you the opportunity to let paint. You need space. Next steps on this, right now, I'm going to step away from it because I'm exhausted. Part of me is challenged to step away because I have this energy level, but I also think that I just need to step away. It will be okay that it hardens up. I'll study it for a while over coffee. My chair is over there for coffee. And I just have to reflect on it a little bit. What I'm liking so far is I reached my goal. I covered the surface. There are some pieces peeking out, but that provides a sparkle. And as I go and give attention to all of these things, I'll question each one of those. Do I fill it? Do I soften it? Do I leave it? Do I divide it in two? So it's a constant evaluation. You can see now as this is beginning to dry and harden up that the colors are becoming more true. We know from experience that white lies, but it's there's another quote when painting: don't tell me the truth, tell me a beautiful lie. So white is a beautiful participant as far as I'm concerned, but it really requires a lot of experience to understand what it looks like at any given state so that you can know whether to leave it alone or not. Since we've got these beads of water on the surface and I put all of this color, if I chose to, I could go right here and I could take this entire thing down to paper. Okay, because again, it floated on water. If you went directly onto paper, you could probably scrub it down to 50%, and it'll look just mud. I'm seeing this dry just right in front of my eyes, and I'm seeing that the white, which seems so intrusive, is really kind of a veil that connects a lot of unrelated pieces, right? So our job technically as an artist is to relate unrelated pieces. Okay. Let's take a couple minutes for questions if you have them. No questions.
Kathy asks, will metallics enter this one?
All right, so I'll ask you to answer that. Why did we use metallics before? And why would we use them now? So when I introduced the simple, I'm sorry, I'm playing the Riddler. The only reason we use metallics is to help suggest the surface. So we've used metallics on reflective surfaces. So I don't see any place for metallics in this. There are other times I use metallics just to play with water. I'll keep talking because you might want to scratch some things in here, just my fingernail. I use topaz sometimes and silver sometimes to suggest a richer reflection of water. However, for the most part, I use metallics and recommend them to be used this way to better tell the story about the surface. And otherwise, I think you're at risk of getting gimmicky using paints because they're cool. Just my point of view. So no metallics in this one. What else? I see 10 in the chat there. Did we go through those? Okay, so
I did ask a question. If he's not going to read it, I was just wondering, do you think, Ken, that you overpainted your painting? Because for me, there was one point, like maybe 5 minutes before you stopped working on it for today, that it was like amazing, and then I feel like you overpainted it and it went beyond like what happened to me. And so I'm wondering if this is something that happens frequently with watercolor techniques, or is it just that you're just going to keep working and go back and just do it again?
I mean, I think that's a really good question. When is a painting done, right? And I think any artist is faced with that question, when is it done? I'm after something that for me requires revisiting it. And the answer that I would say to you is that if you thought it looked amazing before, wait till it's done. It will just sing with volume and color and value and effects that I can't get that with one pass. But I do understand, and I've reached this several times. In fact, I was doing this oil painting of a rose window, and I almost used it as just kind of a stress ball. You know, whenever it's stressed, I just go and paint in there. And it was 36 by 36. I probably painted it for 2-3 months. And the reality was that there were about 4 or 5 good paintings in there that then I painted over. And I think the question, it's the answer to this is always balancing what have you got and what are you trying to achieve. So by someone else's standards, I have already reached an amazing painting. By my standards, I've barely begun. And when this thing is done, it will be amazing. Anybody else? Oh, just to point this out. So another product I bought from Amazon.com, I had some bark charcoal. I end up losing it. I walk around the house. I put it on a shelf. I never find it. Anyway, I just bought some vine charcoal, 25 pieces. I haven't even opened it. that look like this, that are that long, 25 pieces for like 12 bucks, Amazon.com. So if anybody's looking for that. I do think that you really raised, and I think that we'll always see this, is when are we done? When is a painting finished? Even if I'm after something that I believe needs multiple passes, if I get it, I had a painting on the wall over here, 36 by 36. I did 2 passes on it, and I was convinced I needed to do more. Friend of mine, artist, came over a year later, saw it, and he goes, frame that bitch, it's done. So, you know, there's always that question, when is it done? What are we trying to achieve? How is that? What have you got? Where's the balance? Sometimes it's good to have a really, really trusted friend to be a counterpoint. I have one incredible friend that sees everything I do at every state. And that is invaluable. Any other comments?
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to give us a brief slideshow of some of your finished products that you really, really like? Just an overview of.
Is that a question or are you commenting?
That's a question.
Okay. Yeah, I could do that. Let me reflect on how I would go about that. Whether I introduce you real live paintings and put them up here, or if I bring you, slides or whatever. What I would say is I am online. My website is kenkarlic.com. So there are about 40 pieces in watercolor and 40 pieces in oil. So you can get a range, and you can even see how I compare. And same with Instagram, it's just Ken Karlic. So. What else? Anybody else? Okay, let's touch briefly upon, I know the question will come, should I paint what you just painted? And the answer will always be yes, unless you are completely object to it. Now, I personally think you could paint it, and if it's too overwhelming, you could simplify it. You can paint a corner of it. But part of the reason I'm picking what I pick is to show you a variety of subject matter and painting a variety of subject matter. And I know some may say, well, I don't paint this, I don't paint this, I'd rather paint this. I would just say you came to this class for a reason. What was the reason? So I would encourage you to paint what I paint, unless you just totally object to it, but it should be something similar. The one I did last piece, and I also want you to think abstractly, the one I did last week was a skyline, but essentially it was a bunch of rectangles. So it would be important that you look for the formal qualities in something that you paint, and it should be similar. This one is a lot of circular shapes, but then within those circular shapes are a bunch of triangles. So in a lot of ways, this is the opposite of last week. There is no rectangle. So that in itself is a challenge. And I want you to think abstractly, is that, painting flowers, yes, but what I'm doing is painting mostly circles that are squared off here and there. And then in all those petals, they're just triangles. So I hope that answers the question before it's asked. And as I said, I put stuff up regularly on Padlet. So upload your work, look at my work, look at others' work, If somebody doesn't want to be touched in a critique by somebody else, just say feedback from Ken alone, please, something like that. But I think that we all get something out of looking over our shoulder. And one of the things I was really I found remarkable last week was that was a good example of we're all painting the same thing, but we each came away with different paintings. I mean, they are dramatically different, all valuable and all right in their own way, but they're all very different. Some chose to try to stay close. Some really wandered and made it much more of an expressive thing, all of which is okay. I see a note popping up.
So Diane asks, if we are painting additional paintings this week, is it okay to post another work for feedback?
I worked on the bottom right side of that a little bit more.
Well, that's a tough call, because just if I speak freely, I am working hard enough as it is on the stuff we do in this class. So to bring something outside the class, boy, you really want to work me hard, don't you? I hope that answered your question in an oblique way. All right, anybody else? Okay. Thank you for today. Thank you for all your input. Thank you for all of your input is valuable. And it also shows that as artists, we all have our own eye and our own judgment. And that's fundamentally what I'm trying to foster, is you as an individual artist with a bunch of techniques I'm throwing at you. But you need to find a way to kind of, absorb them, process them, throw out the ones that don't work, or put them on a shelf for now. Maybe they don't work now. But I'm having fun. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope there's information that is valuable. Please feel free to ask questions. I enter Padlet a lot, but again, I work my tail off in 3 hours. Don't work me a whole lot more. All right, so if there's no questions, I will see you next week.